The most terrifying realization isn't that we are alone in the universe, but that our biology was never designed for freedom. It was designed for integration, a soft, wet integration into a collective that demands the erasure of the self as the price of survival. We stand on the precipice of understanding that what we call morality is often nothing more than a biological imperative, a chemical leash pulled tight by the unseen masters of our genetic history, and the modern architects of social control who have learned to hack the source code of human empathy. We look at a smile and see warmth, but we fail to see the baring of teeth, the prehistoric signaling of submission, the desperate plea of the prey animal begging the predator to recognize a mirrored consciousness. This is the compliance protocol. It is not a law written in books or encoded in silicon, though it has colonized those spaces as well. It is the dark architecture of human kindness, a sprawling, invisible labyrinth where the walls are made of dopamine and the floor is paved with the crushed remains of dissent. To understand the magnitude of this prison, we must first strip away the romanticism of the human connection. We are taught that empathy is a divine spark, the thing that separates us from the beasts. But clinical observation suggests a far more utilitarian horror. Empathy is a surveillance mechanism. It is the ability to simulate the internal state of another organism, to predict its trajectory, to avoid conflict, or to manipulate an outcome. When we engage in what sociologists call prosocial behavior, we are not acting out of a surplus of spirit. We are engaging in a transactional defense mechanism. We are paying a tax to the tribe to ensure we are not left on the ice to freeze. This is the foundation of the systemic failure of individualism. The moment a child learns that a specific facial muscle contraction, the smile, elicits food and safety, the programming begins. Neural recalibration occurs not through trauma, but through reward. We are trained like dogs, not with electric shocks, but with the terrifying potency of validation. The modern world has industrialized this biological vulnerability. We live in an era of weaponized agreeableness. Walk into any high-functioning corporate environment, any gleaming glass tower of industry, and you will not see the whip. You will see the open floor plan. You will see the relentless enforcement of culture fit. This is cognitive shadowing at an industrial scale. The outlier, the discordant voice, the individual who refuses to simulate the required emotional wavelength is not executed. They are isolated. They are subjected to a quiet, suffocating exclusion until their cortisol levels spike to toxic ranges, forcing them to either leave or undergo a spontaneous, traumatic personality realignment. We call this being a team player, but it is effectively the death of the autonomous ego. The darkness of kindness lies in its demand for reciprocity. It creates a debt. When a system, be it a corporation, a government, or a family, extends the hand of benevolence, it is securing a lien on your behavior. Consider the architecture of the modern smart city, the ultimate physical manifestation of the protocol. It is designed to be user-friendly, safe, and inclusive. These are euphemisms for friction-free surveillance. The systems that guide us through our days, from the algorithms that curate our news to the soft lighting in public spaces, are designed to reduce the heart rate, to lull the critical faculties into a state of receptive passivity. A calm population is a compliant population. We are being gently steered, cattle prod replacing cattle prod with the nudge theory of behavioral economics. If you can make the subject feel good about their obedience, if you can frame submission as an act of virtue, you have achieved the ultimate tyranny. You have created a slave who defends the chains because the chains feel like
hug. This is where the concept of the nice becomes chilling. Niceness is the aesthetic of the compliance protocol. It is the smoothing over of rough edges, the suppression of the necessary conflict that drives truth. In a society obsessed with safetyism, the person who speaks a harsh truth is viewed as a pathogen. The immune system of the collective activates to expel them. We see this in the digital sphere, where the reputation economy has gamified social standing. The like, the upvote, share, these are not metrics of quality, they are digital oxytocin drips. They train the user to perform, to dance for the algorithm, to shape their thoughts into the shapes that the collective finds most palatable. We are witnessing the real-time evolution of a hive mind, not through telepathy, but through the convergent evolution of behavior driven by the desperate need for digital validation. The user engages in neural recalibration every time they delete a post that didn't get enough traction. They are pruning their own psyche to fit the template. We must look deeper into the biological substrate. Oxytocin, the so-called love hormone, is the chemical enforcement agent of the compliance protocol. While it promotes bonding within the in-group, it simultaneously increases aggression toward the out-group. It is the molecule of tribal warfare, disguised as the molecule of a mother's touch. It blinds us to the systemic flaws of our own tribe and demonizes the other. It is the biological root of the us versus them dynamic that the architects of control exploit with surgical precision. By artificially stimulating this bonding mechanism through nationalism, corporate loyalty programs, or religious fervor, the system creates a barrier against critical thought. To question the group is to experience a physical withdrawal, a pain that registers in the same centers of the brain as a broken bone. We are biologically hostage to our need for belonging. The architecture extends into the physical design of our lives. The open-plan office, the glass-walled conference room, the suburban lawn without fences, these are panopticons disguised as liberation. They operate on the principle that visibility induces conformity. When we are watched, or when we perceive that we might be watched, we internalize the gaze of the observer. We engage in cognitive shadowing of the ideal citizen. We perform diligence, we perform happiness, we perform kindness. But who are we performing for? We are performing for the protocol. The tragedy is that there is often no one behind the glass. The system is automated. We are regulating ourselves, policing our own thoughts, suppressing our own rage, all to maintain the equilibrium of a machine that regards us as nothing more than metabolic fuel. The most insidious aspect of this architecture is how it handles dissent. In the old world, the boot stomped on the human face forever. In the new world, the dissenter is met with concern. They are referred to human resources. They are suggested therapy. They are placed on a performance improvement plan. The language is therapeutic, distinct, clinical. It frames rebellion as a mental health crisis or a lack of soft skills. It pathologizes free will. If you are angry at the system tells you that you are stressed, that you need mindfulness, that you need to breathe. It deflects the structural violence of the hierarchy back onto the individual, creating a feedback loop of guilt and shame. I am not unhappy because I am exploited, the subject thinks. I am unhappy because I have failed to practice gratitude. This is the weaponization of stoicism, the twisting of ancient wisdom into a tool for corporate pacification. We must also dissect the role of the Good Samaritan in the age of surveillance capitalism. Altruism has been monetized. We see the rise of performative philanthropy, where the act of giving is meaningless without the accompanying press release or viral
video. The act of kindness is stripped of its moral weight and converted into social capital, a currency that can be traded for influence. This corrupts the very soul of the observer. We begin to suspect every good deed, every outstretched hand. The cynical cortex overrides the trusting heart, and we retreat further into isolation, which paradoxically makes us more vulnerable to the systems that promise to bridge that gap for a monthly subscription fee. The protocol thrives on this atomization. It breaks the organic bonds of community and replaces them with synthetic intermediaries. You do not borrow sugar from your neighbor, you order it from a warehouse. You do not cry on a friend's shoulder, you type your symptoms into a chatbot. The darker implication of the compliance protocol is the potential for a genetic bottleneck of personality. If the system selects for agreeableness for high compliance traits, are we breeding out the rebel? Are we creating a domestication syndrome in humans, similar to what we did to wolves? The physical markers of domestication, smaller brains, retained juvenile features, reduced aggression, are already metaphors for the modern psychological state. We are becoming eternal children, looking for a parent in the state, in the corporation, in the AI. We are outsourcing our executive function to the protocol because the burden of choice is too heavy to bear in a world of infinite, terrifying complexity. We crave the cage because the cage makes sense. The cage has rules. The wild is chaos. Let us analyze the vocabulary of the oppressor. Community standards, best practices, core values. These are linguistic viruses. They sound benign, but they are exclusionary boundaries. They define the limits of acceptable thought. To step outside them is to face cancellation, a modern excommunication that results in social death. The fear of social death is a biological imperative, stronger than the fear of physical pain for many. The brain treats social rejection as a threat to life, triggering the same survival cascades as a predator in the brush. The architects know this. They leverage this fear to enforce a homogeneity of thought that totalitarian dictators of the past could only dream of. They don't need secret police. They have comment sections. They have the peer-to-peer enforcement of the protocol, where every citizen is a deputy in the Department of Normalcy. The terrifying efficiency of neural recalibration is visible in the way we process tragedy. We are fed a steady diet of horror mixed with heartwarming trivialities. A genocide on one screen, a cat video on the other. This juxtaposition is not accidental. It is a desensitization technique. It fragments the emotional response, preventing the coalescence of righteous fury that leads to revolution. We are kept in a state of low-level emotional exhaustion, capable of performative empathy, posting a flag, a hashtag, a black square, but incapable of sustained structural critique. The kindness we are permitted is purely symbolic. It is a pressure valve designed to release the steam of conscience without turning the gears of change. We feel good for having posted, and the machine grinds on, lubricated by our impotent gestures. And what of the shadow? Jung spoke of the shadow as the repressed dark side of the psyche. The compliance protocol demands the total amputation of the shadow. But the shadow does not die, it festers. It leaks out in the passive-aggressive email, in the sudden road rage, in the obsession with true crime, in the voracious consumption of violent media. We are a society of polite people dreaming of murder. We suppress the animal, and the animal goes mad in the basement. This disconnection from our own capacity for violence makes us weak. It makes us unable to recognize true malevolence when it arrives wearing a suit and smiling a focus group smile. We have lost the ability to read the predator because we have been told that
Unkindness is a myth, that everyone is essentially good if you just hear their story. This is a fatal error. The narrative of systemic failure is often used to describe when things go wrong, a market crash, a riot, a war. But from the perspective of the protocol, these are not failures, they are recalibrations. They are the shedding of dead weight. The system is anti-fragile. It feeds on disorder. When a crisis occurs, the plea for unity and kindness becomes a deafening roar. We must come together. We must support the leaders. We must sacrifice for the greater good. This is when the shackles are tightened, always in the name of protection. The darkness of human kindness is that it is the ultimate Trojan horse for authoritarianism. No one marches into the future shouting, "Enslave us." They march shouting, "Save us." And the protocol answers. In the deep logic of this architecture, the individual is a variable that must be solved for. We are messy, unpredictable, prone to erratic bursts of creativity and destruction. The goal of the compliance protocol is to smooth this variance, to turn the jagged line of a human life into a flat, predictable sine wave. They use nudges, gamification, and social credit scores to sand us down. They want us to be interchangeable parts in a grand biological computer. If you are too sharp, you damage the other parts. If you are too hard, you break the gears. You must be soft. You must be kind. You must be compliant. The dark architecture is not built of stone. It is built of our own desire to be good people. We are the masons of our own imprisonment, laying the bricks one polite nod at a time. We must look at the educational systems that feed the protocol. Schools are factories for cognitive shadowing. The bells, the rows, the emphasis on rote repetition and regurgitation of approved facts, these are not failures of pedagogy. They are successes of conditioning. Children are taught that truth comes from authority, that intelligence is the ability to guess what the teacher wants, not the ability to deconstruct the world. By the time a human reaches adulthood, their neural pathways are paved highways for the protocol. Independent thought requires hacking through the jungle of one's own conditioning, a task so exhausting that most settle for the highway, even if it leads off a cliff. The kindest thing a teacher can do, according to the system, is prepare the child for the workforce, to prepare them for the crushing reality of the cubicle, to break the spirit early so it doesn't snap later. Even our biology is being rewritten. The rise of prescription psychotropics to manage the despair of the modern condition is a chemical extension of the protocol. We are medicating the symptoms of a sick society rather than treating the disease. If you cannot bear the crushing weight of the meaningless labor, the isolation, and the surveillance, the system offers a pill to sever the connection between the reality and the emotional response. This is the ultimate neural recalibration. It is the chemical lobotomy of the descent reflex. We are creating a population that is chemically incapable of revolution. They are stable, they are functioning, they are kind, but they are hollowed out, their inner fire dampened to a pilot light that barely keeps the heart beating. This is the noir reality of our existence. We are detectives investigating the crime scene of our own souls, only to find that we are the perpetrators. We have traded the terrifying vastness of liberty for the cozy confines of the protocol. We have accepted the definition of kindness that serves the masters. We have confused obedience with virtue. And as we sit in the soft light of our screens, bathed in the dopamine of the 1,000 likes, we fail to hear the locking of the cell door. It clicked shut a long time ago. The only question that remains, the question that echoes in the silence between our heartbeats, is whether there is enough wildness left. In our DNA to pick the lock, or if we will simply smile at the bars and thank them for keeping us safe. The investigation into this architecture requires a coldness that rivals the system itself. We must detach from the sentimental narratives of humanity. We must look at the mother comforting the child and ask, is this love? Or is this the transmission of the submission code? We must look at the charity gala and ask, is this generosity? Or is this the laundering of guilt and the purchase of immunity? We must look at ourselves in the mirror and ask, is the face I see my own? Or is it a mask provided by the protocol? To tear off the mask is to risk the skin beneath. It is a painful, bloody process, but it is the only path to the real. The alternative is to remain a shadow, a phantom echoing the movements of a machine that does not know we exist, a machine that will grind our bones to dust and call it progress. The compliance protocol is running. It has 99. We'll find the trigger for the awakening, or perhaps we will find only the silence of the void. But we must look. We have a biological imperative to know what is eating us. The architecture is vast, but it was built by hands. And what was built can be dismantled. The question is not, can we do it, but can we survive the vertigo of true freedom? Can we survive the cold wind that blows when the walls come down? The investigation begins now. Stay with the signal. The noise is trying to drown us out.